The Thief and the Cobbler, the Recobbled cut. If you're an animation fan, then there's a good chance that you've heard about the production of The Thief and the Cobbler, an animated film independently made by the animation director of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Richard Williams, for around 30 years, from 1964 all the way down to the mid-90s. What happened was that Williams got kicked out of his own project, and the film ended up becoming an unoriginal Aladdin ripoff not worth remembering by the public. Fast forward to 2006, a huge Richard Williams fan by the name of Garrett Gilchrist decided to do the movie justice and made a fan-edited version of the film, with the help of many different animators who had once worked on the movie, with using a bit of elements from the failed Miramax version to capture the original vision that Williams had for this movie. Also, as time would move on after Gilchrist released the Recobbled cut, there would be several revisions out to this to clean up a few scenes, and maybe there might be more coming in the future. So I just want to say that the one I'm reviewing now is the Mark IV version. Now, with all that said, did Gilchrist manage to capture the true vision of what Williams wanted the movie to be? Or is that vision not even that great to begin with? Let's find out. The story. Since there are so many things that are happening at once in this film, the story would be very complex and would be hard to narrow down what's going on, right? Actually, quite the opposite. When you put this movie on paper, there's not much to describe about it. It's just boy meets girl, then boy has to save the day. Very simple, yet it works to its advantage. Normally, I always believe that the writing should take more of a priority to the visuals and the animation. This one, however, takes the big risk to focus more on the animation rather than the story. This is when the animation becomes the big star. When you see a little scenario happening that just describes like how the thief tries to run away from a game of polo, the movie would show everything that could happen in this case. Now, I know that there are a lot of movies out there that put emphasis more on the visuals, like the Transformers films or whatever dumb summer blockbuster that's out there. But the reason why the Recobbled cut is more successful at it is that they picked a simple story that's easy to tell and for the audience to comprehend without adding in anything. It doesn't overanalyze its own reasons, exaggerate the scenarios, or even shove in some random bullcrap just for the sake of entertainment. It keeps it straightforward, understandable, and holds on to a scene long enough to keep the audience's attention. There isn't a lot to do with the story, but that's because it made it work around the biggest star of the film. The animation. A movie that would make it all about the animation without relying too much on the story is practically very rare. A good example of something like this would be the Fantasia films. But then comes The Thief and the Cobbler that would not only make the animation the star of the film, but then comes The Thief and the Cobbler that would not only make the animation the star of the film, but also brings it to a whole new level that no one would ever think it could do. This is going to be a pretty big statement, but The Thief and the Cobbler is home to some of the greatest hand-drawn animation ever created. Where do I even begin with this? The background animation brings out so much detail to the point that the movie can give us an entire tour of the Golden City, from the palace to the village to the witch's lair and even beyond. And keep in mind, the place is huge and the details are minuscule, so you can see the amount of years it has to take in order for the audience to see where the characters are going. For the designs, it keeps some of that Arabian style in order to help the settings, but also plays around the cartoony yet artistically symmetrical side in order to work with the animation as well. As for the character animation, oh my god, what a piece of beauty. Not only are their movements realistically smooth, but also works around with the background animation in order to make some amazing optical illusions. Scenes like the cobbler chasing the thief are literally animation at its finest, and shows the true capabilities of what the medium can do. However, there is one thing that keeps it away from perfection. Keep in mind, this is a fan-edited version of the movie, so there will be a few hiccups along the way that will break the illusion. Of course, there are times when the resolution would switch around from high to low definition, that's not a big deal, but suddenly, whoop, it's now rough animation, or whoop, now we see some storyboarding. It doesn't ruin the experience, it's just these moments would come in unexpectedly and drastically change the looks of the film. I'm sure some of these will be fixed in later revisions, but whatever animation is completed here can be categorized as true art. The characters. A lot like the story, the characters are more simplified in order to emphasize on the animation, so there wouldn't be a big surprise if the characters don't feature any major development or show any complexities. First, we got Tak, the cobbler who suddenly finds himself into the palace and falls in love with the princess. Speaking of which, Princess Yum Yum is the love interest of the movie, who also shows that she's willing to go out to save her city. Then there's King Nod, who's a rather unusual character. At the beginning, he's always totally tired and plays around with his Mombasa girl. And you know, personally, the less I know about his Mombasa, the better. But then when he gets the feeling that his city is under attack, he immediately goes into non-stop panic mode. Then there's Zigzag, the villain of the film and the king's great vizier, who plans to conquer the Golden City and have the princess as his wife. Out of all the characters here, Zigzag would be the one who would stand out the most. Whether it be speaking in rhymes, Vincent Price's performance, or just his overall design, the concept just sounds weird by having all these elements for a character. But because of the movie's artistic style, it fits in just fine. And then there's the thief, who's more of the comic relief who always gets himself into trouble just so he could steal whatever he sees. A lot similar to Scrat from the Ice Age movies. What I really like about him though is that not only is he there to give the movie some humor, but he also plays an important role in the story, so his presence doesn't feel pointless. As you can tell, the characters are very basic when it comes to their description, so they're not what would make the movie memorable. However, like I mentioned in the story, at least they keep them simple and not overdo anything, so none of them would be passed off as annoying or tedious. There's not a lot to say about the characters, but at least none of them are anything bad. Now, I don't know how popular or how big of a cultural impact this movie would have been if Richard Williams did finish the movie the way he wanted it to be, but I sure know that this really would have been something. The recobbled cut of The Thief and the Cobbler gives us an opportunity to see what would have been Williams' magnum opus that may look incomplete in some parts, but tells a simple story in the most incredible way with some of the best animation out there. If you guys are an animation fan or simply a film buff, then you should do yourselves a favor and go check it out. You can easily find it on the YouTube channel The Thief Archives. However, you need to know a bit of what happened in the production, and keep in mind this is a fan-edited version of the film, so you don't get too surprised when the sudden rough animation or storyboards pop out of nowhere. Although, if you do remember what I said at the beginning of this review, you'll be fine. As time would move on, I'm glad to say that The Thief and the Cobbler is slowly gaining the popularity and attention it deserves. The recobbled cut certainly was a big help, but there was also the 2012 documentary The Persistence of Vision, where it takes a look at the movie's production from the beginning all the way up to when Williams was kicked out of the project. And on December 10th, 2013, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, along with Williams himself, premiered his original work print from 1992, along with his other works. So pretty much, he actually premiered an official director's cut of the film. I do feel a bit bad for critiquing some elements in this, considering that the recobbled cut is incomplete, and I'm sure that there will be more versions in the future that will clean up some of the animations and stuff. But for how it is now, it's a wonderful piece of animation history, and it earns itself the AniMat's seal of approval. guys, this is AniMat. Now I will say I am really happy that I was able to see The Thief and the Cobbler the way it's supposed to be. But if there is one thing that I would love to see from it, like somewhere in my lifetime, is if I'm able to watch the Recobbled cut or the original work print in its complete form. No rough animations, no storyboardings, everything is complete. That would be just godforsaken sensational for me, you have no idea. But in the meantime, let's move on in our next review, In the Animation Hat. And by the way, if you guys have any suggestions for an animated film that I could put in the animation hat, then write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, let's get to it. Alright, this one. Okay, now it's getting tricky. I don't know why, before I was so good. I gotta come on, you're stupid. You can even see the paper flying. Finally! Thank God! Alright, and... Okay, so the next review shall be... One. Oh, we got another great one coming up. We got another great one. Well... Oh boy, what can I say about this? What can I say? Well... For the longest time, I've got a lot of people requesting me like those animated superhero movies. A lot of people say that this could be the best one.